Hey listeners, thanks for dropping in. I'm Christy.
And I'm Melissa. And this is Buried Motives, where we dig deep into the details of some of the most gruesome
dirtbag murderers. Hey listeners.
Welcome back to Buried Motives.
Thank you for joining us.
We are happy that you're here, and we're happy to celebrate Mother's Day coming up.
Yes, to all those beautiful women out there listening to us right now. If you're a mother or not, we do wish you a happy Mother's Day.
Exactly. We know mothers come in all forms, and so we are grateful for all the women who have mothered, guided, supported, and loved the people in their lives.
100%.
Anyone that spreads love in this world of dirtbags needs a day to celebrate them.
Yes. So regardless of your motherly situation, celebrate.
Live it up.
Treat yourself. You deserve it.
Sometimes you only get one day a year to do that.
Sadly, that can be true.
So, Christy, I have to ask you, did you always want to be a mom?
Yes.
You did?
I did, yeah.
It was just always in the cards for you.
Yeah, for as long as I can remember. I remember always wanting to be a mom.
That is cool.
How about you?
I love my children, but it wasn't something that I remember seeking after when I was a kid. But there are some women that have dreamed of being mothers like you their whole lives and will go to great lengths to ensure that they become one. We've covered some of those.
Yeah, we have.
We have also covered some women who probably should never have become mothers at all.
Oh, we've definitely covered some like that.
Yes. I was thinking Shelley Notek, Rosemary West,
Betty Lou Beats.
Yes.
The list can go on and on.
So many.
Gertrude. We can't forget about Gertrude.
Or Belle.
Yes.
So many moms that probably shouldn't have been moms. The dirtbag we're going to talk about today falls into that category.
Oh no, we're going
Yes.
bad mom for Mother's Day.
We are. But not in a way that we have ever discussed before.
Really? What have we not discussed when it comes to bad parenting and being a horrible mother?
Well, we haven't discussed a dirtbag like this.
Oh no.
The actions of today's dirtbag are so utterly incomprehensible to me, as they were to so many others that learned about her dirty little secrets. On April 12th, 2014, Darren Brad West returned to the home that his parents owned and where his 3 daughters were living. His adult life after graduating from Pleasant Grove High School in Utah was a tumultuous one. But he was making an attempt to turn his life around. After spending some time in the Marine Reserves and attending community college, he married his high school sweetheart, Megan Huntsman, on April 3rd, 1993. The couple had been together in high school, and they had had a daughter together. Their second daughter followed soon after their wedding, and their third child was born several years later. By the time the third daughter joined the family, this couple was living a lie.
Oh.
To everyone around them, Darren and Megan were a sweet couple that lived next door. He worked at an excavating company, and Megan had worked briefly at a grocery store, but mostly stayed home to care for their 3 beautiful girls, making dinner every night, keeping the house tidy, and meeting the family's daily needs. Both were described as good and loving parents by their family and their kids.
Oh.
Unknown to their family and friends or neighbors, the couple had become entrenched in a meth addiction.
Oh no.
What had begun as the occasional use of pot and alcohol had went down a very slippery slope into hard drugs.
And nobody noticed.
No, it is a common misconception that meth addiction always produces very visible signs. The frail-looking person, all disheveled with messy hair and sunken cheeks and teeth rotting out of their mouth, unable to focus on anything but their next hit. But that's not always the case. There is a significant number of people that remain fairly high-functioning on meth, and they are able to keep up with daily routines and hygiene and able to conceal the fact that they are using.
Wow.
It's not the picture of a meth addict that comes to my mind, but there are some of these people that can do this.
No, you're not picturing that picturesque family living down the street who seem to have it all together.
Right. These kind of people are often able to hide their addictions for years, with no one being the wiser.
So does that mean that their children were being taken well care of? They were going to school with their hair brushed, clean clothes, lunches packed. There was no warning signs.
That's right. And the children believed that their parents were doing a good job raising them.
Okay. But they didn't know any different.
That's right. Unfortunately, because they were so high functioning, though, they were able to keep their meth addiction a secret, and it just cemented to them in their mind that they weren't really addicts and that they had no addiction because they were able to keep up appearances.
Oh, I can see how they would begin to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
And how it would allow them to get deeper into their addictions.
Exactly. Darren and Megan kept the facade running until June 8th, 2005. When Darren was convicted of possessing 2 chemicals that were commonly used to make meth, phosphorus and iodine.
Oh, so they were cooking.
Those were the charges that were brought up.
Okay.
Their marriage was one built on lies and drugs, and by some people's accounts, family violence. Almost all of their lies were revealed when the charges were brought against Darren. Even when the charges were brought against him, many still had a hard time believing that this family, with the hardworking father and the shy mother with the 3 lovely, well-behaved girls, could have anything to do with drugs.
That would be shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And they're paying their bills. They're making ends meet, which you don't necessarily associate that with someone, especially 2 people together who have a heavy drug addiction.
Right. They weren't completely self-sufficient. They were living in a house that his parents provided, but it sounded like they were fairly financially stable.
Yeah, they weren't going hungry at the end of the day.
No, they weren't.
Maybe you're going to get to this, but do you think he was cooking meth and maybe even selling it to help pay for their addiction?
Well, there's that possibility. When the charges came down, Darren adamantly denied that he had any intention of ever making meth. He said he was merely holding on to this package of chemicals for a friend. He said a friend had given him, I think it was $200 to hold on to this package for him. And because he wanted the money, he held on to the package.
Okay. But isn't that the oldest excuse? I'm holding it for a friend?
Yes, absolutely. To me, it just screams, yeah, I was intending on making meth.
Right. But who knows?
Exactly. Darren was sentenced in August of 2006 to 9 years in prison.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. It is surprising to me that sometimes drug-related charges are much more stiff than charges relating to people actually hurting another person in a physical way.
Drug addiction does do a lot of harm. But yeah, sometimes I'm just as shocked to you. We've seen murderers do less time.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Darren did appeal his sentence on 3 different occasions, but all were denied. That's how adamant he was that he was not trying to sell meth.
Okay.
While serving time in prison, his marriage deteriorated, and Megan floundered with her own addiction, which was no longer a secret. She quit meth, but fell into using pot and alcohol more heavily as a substitute, and her depression grew worse. Originally, she and the girls had continued to stay in the home that Darren's parents owned. But after a falling out between her and his parents, she was asked to leave. There were several reasons given why Steve and Diane West, Darren's parents, kicked their daughter-in-law out of their house. Some said that Megan was kicked out of the house because she was still using drugs. Pot could now be frequently smelled around the property. It sounded like once the secret was out...
Why hide it?
Exactly.
And marijuana has a very distinctive smell.
It does. And so other neighbors were noticing in this kind of middle-class neighborhood. Other neighbors reported that it was because Megan had begun to take up with other men while Darren was in prison. And so his parents were like, look, if you're going to be with other men, you need to leave the house.
Maybe it was both, Melissa.
That's right. It could always be both in this case. For whatever reason, the family had a falling out, and it was decided that it would be best if Megan left the home and left the care of her 3 daughters to Darren's family. Darren's sister moved into the house to help the girls, who were at the time 18, 17, and 11.
Oh, and Megan agreed to this.
Megan did. Megan went to live with her mom for a short time and then eventually moved into a trailer with a new boyfriend. In 2014, after being released from federal prison, Darren was looking forward to getting out of the halfway house that he had been in and back into his home with his family, his 3 girls at least.
So he actually served his full sentence.
Yeah, he did. When he got out, his daughters were now 22, 20, and 14. And he and Megan were not together anymore, just in case you hadn't picked up on that from her moving in with her new boyfriend.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But he definitely missed out on a important part of those girls' lives.
He did.
Those are formative years.
It is, but it sounds like they were very well taken care of by his family. His sister and his mom and dad were quite active in their lives.
Oh, okay.
That day, April 12th, 2014, Darren returned to his family's home along with other family members and were cleaning out the garage in preparation for him to move back in. The family spent the day at the house at 536 East, 200 North Pleasant Grove, sorting through the multitude of family memorabilia, children's toys, Christmas decorations, and random stuff that families just generally collect over the years.
Oh, we all do it.
Yes.
That's the only good thing about moving is decluttering, dejunking.
It's so true. It does feel so good once you've just gotten it all out there.
It does.
But that's not the feeling that this family would be left with at the end of the day.
Oh.
As they were going through everything in the garage, they came across a very small box with a noticeable chemical odor. Many newspaper reports from 2014 report that it was Darren who first noticed this box. But during the trial, one officer testified that it was the couple's youngest daughter who found it and opened it. More correctly, she was the couple's youngest living daughter. Inside the white box, wrapped with black electrical tape and reeking of chemicals, was a bag with a decaying newborn body.
No way.
Yes.
Megan had given birth and they just kept the baby's body in this box?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Darren and the rest of the family were shocked and horrified.
Darren didn't know?
Nope. Calls went out rapidly. One to Megan and one to 911. When Darren spoke to Megan, he demanded to know what was going on and whose baby it was. Megan told him that it was hers, that she had delivered the baby and that it was stillborn, and she had been afraid to go to the hospital and tell anybody about it for fear of what would happen. To the best of her recollection, the baby had been born around the time that his drug charges were being dealt with, and she said she was too scared to tell anybody about the baby. So she put the baby's small frame in a bag and then in a box like a tomb and hid it among other boxes in the garage. When police arrived at the scene, they gradually...
Wait, we got to talk about this.
Okay.
So how far along was she in her pregnancy? Like, how developed was this baby?
It was full term, but it had obviously been there for quite some time.
So would he not have noticed that his wife was pregnant when he was getting arrested?
That is only one of the many questions you are going to ask today.
Because I don't know how you just have a baby without your husband knowing that you're even pregnant.
And that was everybody's reaction.
And what chemical do you know that she had preserved the baby in?
Iodine.
Iodine. Oh, okay. Okay, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
And there's going to be more still.
Wow.
Because when the police arrived at the scene, they gradually took stock of what they were dealing with. The garage had been torn apart in the cleaning process, with boxes strewn all over the place, all over the driveway. Because it was a suspicious death, police had to come up with a way to methodically search through the mess for possible evidence. Evidence collection has always amazed me. I always think it's so fascinating because sometimes it's blatantly obvious what is evidence and what isn't. But in this case, there was just this single horrifying box with a precious baby inside. And that was it. That's all they had to go on to kind of figure out, amongst all of this other junk that's spread out all over, okay, what tells us a little piece of this story?
If anything at all.
Exactly. Darren tells the police about his conversation with Megan. So as some of the officers are searching through boxes at his house and looking for other evidence that might indicate what had happened to this baby, other officers go and pick Megan up for questioning.
Yeah, I guess.
When police arrive at her mobile home, Megan didn't appear overly surprised and told her boyfriend over the phone that, quote, something had happened to explain why their home was now being searched and that she was going to jail. And she said this despite having any past criminal history.
But she knew what she had done.
Yes.
And she's figuring that she's been found out.
Mm-hmm. She accompanied the police without resisting in any way, mentioning to a neighbor something about a stillborn. At the station, Megan tells the officer the same story about delivering the infant at home and that it was sadly stillborn. She says that she was too scared to tell anybody about it, and so she had hidden it.
Which, if that was true, you can see that being a plausible story.
Right, especially if it was around the time that police were investigating.
Right. Her husband's just been sent to jail.
Her world is coming crashing down because all of their addiction secrets are now out in the open, and she's worried about her other 3 kids getting taken away.
100%.
So it all sounds like a plausible story.
It does.
While she's being questioned, the police continued to search through the garage and sadly came across another box similar to the first.
No.
Yes.
Melissa.
And then another, and another, and another, and it just keeps going.
Get out.
Each of the boxes contains the barely recognizable remains of a newborn wrapped in towels or articles of clothing and then in plastic bags.
Oh, okay. I was not prepared for that.
Isn't that horrific?
That is.
Yes.
This is not a whoops, this happened where we can understand now what happened with her, what's going on.
No, at first you're thinking, okay, maybe that is plausible, especially if she had a stillborn. How horrific.
Right. She could have been traumatized, not thinking clearly. You can get some understanding of that. But multiple babies in multiple boxes?
Yes.
They can't all be her babies.
They are.
They are?
About an hour into the interview, the officers with Megan get an update on what has been found in the garage, and they confront Megan with these findings. 39-year-old mother of 3 tells police that there are 8 to 9 infants in the garage.
What?
She tells police all but one she killed after giving birth to them at home. She used her bare hands as she snuffed out the lives of these precious newborns just as they were taking their first breaths.
What?
I told you we had never covered something like this. She admits that some she strangled by using her thumbs to press into their tiny necks, and others she suffocated. And there had been one that was stillborn, saving her from the extra work of killing it after she delivered it.
What a wretched monster. How can you do that?
It is totally incomprehensible to me.
And already being a mom, you have 3 daughters who you love.
Yeah, how do you do that?
No, you understand what you're taking away.
There is so many questions about why and how this could happen.
And how do you get pregnant that many times? She's the most fertile woman I've ever heard of.
Crazy, right? When police tell her that in one of the boxes they found a black elastic hair tie around one of the infants' necks, Megan is gut-wrenchingly honest with them and tells them that she placed the elastic there to make sure the infant would die.
She is awful.
I know. I can't imagine any mother or any human being looking down on a defenseless newborn and doing something so cold-hearted.
No. You leave them at the fire station if you don't want them.
Exactly. When I was researching this case, all I could think about was when I used to work in labor and delivery.
Oh.
And there were times when I would come home emotionally drained because the hospital that I worked at was the one that provided the methadone clinic for pregnant moms. It would break my heart just to see the baby sitting on the warmers instead of in loving arms. And there were so many times that I would just walk around during my shift doing my charting with the baby in my arms because I just wanted them to be held. I cannot fathom a mother holding her infant in her arms and suffocating it or strangling it to death.
Right. Why even carry them to term? It's bizarre.
It is so bizarre. But that is exactly what this dirtbag did. Repeatedly. And then tucked them neatly away in boxes and concealed them in their family's garage to be forgotten about, along with all of the other useless trash that you store there.
She literally had a collection and wasn't too worried about it. She had moved out of the home. If I had a dark, dirty secret like that, I would be taking those boxes with me so somebody wouldn't find them.
Yeah. In total, 7 boxes were found by the police that day.
7.
Police take statements from neighbors and family members and widen their search to Megan's mother's house where she had lived afterwards and her new residence to look for other clues and additional bodies because she had said there's 8 to 9. During the investigation, more than 1,000 photographs were taken as a part of the 3 search warrants that police served on Megan's old Pleasant Grove house where the infants were found, her current modular in West Valley City, and her mother's home in Pleasant Grove. Police found bloody leather gloves and women's underwear in the garage, and infant booties and clothing in the master bedroom. A section of blood-stained mattress was collected from storage at her mother's house, and Megan confirms that she had delivered on it once and covered it up. But no more bodies were found. When Megan is questioned again, she says that 8 or 9 babies was just a ballpark figure, that she couldn't really recall exactly how many she had delivered.
Oh, what a dirtbag.
Yeah.
You can't even keep track.
Nope.
Of how many times this has happened.
Those are your children.
Yes. And her 3 daughters that are living, I cannot even imagine what a horrific realization this would be, that your mom is a baby killer.
Right. And her 3rd daughter had been born in between all of these other ones.
That's why there was such an age gap. Why did she choose to let that one live?
We'll get into it because there's a lot about Megan's personality that is very interesting. Megan blames her lack of recall on the drugs that she was taking at the time. The only thing that she seemed certain of was that all the babies were killed during a 10-year period between 1996 and 2006 when Darren began his sentence for his drug charges. Megan tells police in a matter-of-fact way that she killed her newborns because she couldn't think of bringing more children into her abusive marriage when they couldn't afford them. She told police, quote, "It was either drugs and the alcohol or the babies. She couldn't afford both."
So she chose drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you didn't have to kill those babies.
No.
Go get your tubes tied.
Go on birth control. One of the saddest things about this case was that in 2001, about halfway through this period of when she was delivering these children, Utah implemented a safe haven law where anybody can drop off a baby at any hospital and no questions asked, they'll just take it as long as there's no abuse.
Right.
So she could have just dropped them off.
Yeah, no questions asked. You can literally walk in, place your baby, and leave.
That's right. And instead, she chose to kill them.
Oh, this is terrible.
It is so crazy. Later, Megan would say that, quote, "In some small way, I wanted to help them avoid the terrible life that I would have given them. That's why," she says, she, quote, "depraved these little babies of the opportunity of life."
Oh, you can go you know where.
Yeah. One of the officers said Megan's confession was like she was, quote, "unburdening herself of 18 years of guilt." This was as she was confessing to police that she would give birth in the bedroom or the bathroom of their home and then quickly kill each of her children. She would then hold them for a couple of minutes just to make sure that their heartbeat did not return. Not to love them, not to
say goodbye.
No, just to make sure that their heartbeat wasn't going to come back.
And then just carry on your day. Okay, let's make pork chops for dinner tonight.
Yes. When asked why she had kept the bodies in the garage, like you said, Christy, you would have moved them. Megan told police that she was afraid that if she got rid of them or moved them, that she would get caught.
Okay, I can see that.
So she didn't want to bring attention to them.
But you're splitting from your husband and it's his family's home. You know they're going to be found.
Eventually, you know they're going to be found.
Yeah.
Even with Megan being so forthcoming about her actions and motives, there were still a ton of questions. How did this tiny 5'4", 105-pound woman hide 7 pregnancies and deliveries? How did Darren or her girls not know anything about her being pregnant?
And even the recovery. After you've given birth, there's some recovery that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling. And so many people had these questions. How did she keep this hidden? How did nobody know that she was pregnant this many times? But as police dig into Megan's past, her actions and how she pulled off this deceit becomes less of a mystery. Megan was born on February 26, 1975, to Blaine and Joyce Huntsman. She was the oldest of 3 children, getting to set the example for her younger sister and brother. She grew up in Pleasant Grove, Utah, and stayed there her whole life. Her mother's family were long-time respected community members in Pleasant Grove. Her father, who had also lived in the town most of his life, was well respected as well. Her family history is entrenched in the town. She actually attended the same high school as her grandparents and her mom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is some legacy.
It is.
Her dad was a hard worker, making a living as an industrial painter, and her mom worked at a grocery store. The family, from all reports, was a typical family in the 1980s and 90s as Megan grew up. Megan, as a youth, was always extremely quiet and had always kept to herself. She found it difficult to ask for help and rarely shared any personal details with anyone else, not even her immediate family. She was polite and engaged in social settings, but she wasn't the kind of person that opened up very easily. When she became pregnant in high school, as a teen, she had kept the pregnancy hidden from everyone else. It was only after she delivered that her family learned that she had been pregnant at all.
Well, she must be one of those women who just barely shows that she's pregnant.
It sounded like that.
can get away with just wearing baggier clothes and no one notices.
Right. After her first delivery, she moved out of her family's home and married Darren in her senior year at the age of 18. And I'm assuming it was kind of considered the proper thing to do at the time. Her mother said that Megan became even more secretive about her life after that. And when she gave birth to the couple's second child without telling anyone about the pregnancy, it was unexpected, but it wasn't really completely shocking to anybody.
No, it wouldn't be anymore. But Megan knows that she's pregnant. These are not surprise, oh, I'm going into labor.
She knew that she was pregnant. People described her as this extremely private person. Megan suffered from chronic depression during her marriage, and her family members say that she was too scared to reach out for help about the abuse that she received. That it was too difficult for her to share her feelings or emotions with others. She never reached out for help on anything. This fear led to secrecy and presenting a facade to the world that everything was okay with her. You know those t-shirts that say, I'm fine, everything is fine? I believe Megan would have been the poster child for this.
I actually gave one of my daughters a shirt that says exactly that.
But it sounded like she just kept her head down. She didn't want to be noticed. She didn't want anybody to know what was going on in her life. It was after the birth of her second daughter that Megan's use of drugs intensified and became a full-blown addiction. Megan's secretive ways were also intensified. Once the addiction took hold, it was all she could do to keep it under wraps. And when she found herself pregnant, she knew that there was no way that they would be able to support another child and their drug addictions. So she had decided not to tell anybody about the pregnancy and dispose of the baby. She made the same decision again the next time she became pregnant, and then the next time as well. Each time making a conscious choice to kill instead of using birth control.
So I wonder if she decided at some point, as soon as she gets pregnant, oh, well, I have to kill this one too.
It did sound like that.
It's not a form of birth control. My goodness.
Sounds like that's how she viewed it. The only child that would survive through these years between 1996 and 2006 was her youngest living daughter. That was because Megan had let it slip during an interaction with two close relatives that she was pregnant when she found out the other two were expecting as well.
Oh. So then she had some accountability.
That's right. Thankfully, this slip of the tongue protected the couple's youngest living daughter, who was born in the middle of all the other killings.
That is so wild. What would that daughter think and feel, knowing that my mom was planning to kill me and the only reason I'm alive is because she accidentally let it slip that she was pregnant? And I'm assuming that Megan loved her girls. So when this third daughter was born, raising her and loving her and enjoying her as her child, to then be able to continue to do that right afterwards, it's deplorable.
I just can't even wrap my head around it. But because she hadn't concealed this pregnancy, she had to go through with it.
And did she resent her daughter? Like, do you think she actually loved her kids?
It sounded like, from all accounts, that she did love her kids. Her daughters go on, during her sentencing hearing, to speak on their mother's behalf and say that she was a good mother. No one would have ever guessed that she could do this because she took care of them so well.
Wow. She was a good mom to 3 and the worst mom to many more.
Yes. She delivered her third daughter at home, just like all of her previous children. And just like all of her previous pregnancies or deliveries, she never once saw a doctor.
That is wild to me.
Yeah. But that all explains why Megan wanted to keep the pregnancies a secret. But to me, it didn't explain how she was able to pull it off. How do you hide pregnancies and deliveries from everyone? Deliveries can be messy and loud. But I'll admit that not all of them are. Some women are very stoic as they give birth. And as long as you're on a cleanable surface, they can be cleaned up pretty quickly, as long as there are no complications. But labor and delivery are definitely unpredictable. Yeah. How do you hide that or plan for that?
Yes. It was definitely risky business.
Mm-hmm. But Megan was apparently pretty practiced at it and told police that she had once given birth in the bathroom while Darren, his brother, and sister-in-law were in the living room watching TV.
Oh my goodness. Because yeah, you can't plan when that baby's ready to come.
No, they had had people over visiting and she just simply told them that she wasn't feeling well and that she was going to go take a bath and go to bed. Then, without any one of them knowing, she delivered and murdered a child and then tucked it away.
Oh, she must have had easy labors and deliveries. Because that means that she was entertaining while in late stage full-on labor.
Yes. And then when she actually had to deliver, she excused herself to the bathroom.
And that didn't take very long either.
No. And then she cleaned it all up before she tucked herself into bed after putting the baby in the box.
And then her husband comes to bed and gives her a kiss goodnight, not knowing that she's just murdered another one of their children.
Right. But I suppose by the 10th delivery of doing everything yourself, you would get kind of practiced at it. But I still have such a hard time wrapping my mind around all of that. And that's just the delivery. Hiding a pregnancy is a whole nother matter.
Especially from your husband.
Right. It's not just one moment a day that you're hiding. It's 9 months.
Yeah.
Most people were shocked that Megan had had so many pregnancies, let alone the fact that this sweet woman that had occasionally babysat neighborhood children was capable of murdering her own newborns. Most family members and neighbors would say that they never once knew that Megan was ever pregnant, other than with her third daughter. And even then, it was scarcely seen. Megan was a private person and wasn't one to socialize on the streets with idle conversation. A few would say that there were times that they had noticed that Megan would start to wear baggier clothes and put on a little weight, but it was never overly obvious that she was pregnant. And no one's going to ask a woman, hey, are you pregnant?
Well, they shouldn't.
Right.
If you don't know for sure.
Even when it's super obvious, just in case they can be wrong.
Oh, I never do.
That's right. It's just not done.
No.
So while there were a few that did suspect that she might be pregnant, it was never confirmed. And then when Megan showed up and wasn't carrying around a baby several months later, they all just assumed that they had been wrong.
Yeah, you would.
Her children were young at the time, and even though they spent the majority of time with her, they never suspected that she might be pregnant either.
But what about Darren, her husband? Had he not seen his wife naked ever? They're making these babies, so I'm assuming that he would see her naked body.
And police thought the same thing. They had a hard time believing that Darren wouldn't have any knowledge of the pregnancies. How do you sleep beside someone every night and not know they are pregnant?
Right. Because even if the lights are off and you're not actually seeing them, you got hands. You can tell.
Yep. Initially, Darren said that he had no idea that Megan was ever pregnant. And at first, he even denies that the newborns were his. But when DNA evidence shows that he is the father, he tells police that there were a couple of times that he knew Megan was pregnant, but that he had believed her when she told him that she had miscarried.
Oh.
He told police his own recollection of that time in their marriage was marred by the drugs that they were taking, saying, quote, I was so messed up on freaking drugs, I don't know what was going on.
Okay, that explains it.
So remember, they're both pretty high during this time. So even though they look like they're functioning to the outside world, they were pretty messed up. His story about being in the dark and believing Megan's story about miscarriages becomes more believable when the police learn that Megan had recently told her new boyfriend, Marvin James Bradley, that she had had a miscarriage.
She was still doing it.
It does sound like that. He said that he hadn't even known that she was pregnant until she told him she had miscarried.
Oh my goodness. And was she still super high on drugs all this time?
No, she had quit using meth, but she was still using pot and alcohol.
So if she's doing the same thing, she can't really use drugs as her defense.
And there was no baby found at her new residence. So I'm not sure if she actually had a miscarriage or if they just didn't find that baby.
Wow.
As hard as it is to believe that Darren didn't have any knowledge of the pregnancies or his wife's actions, police couldn't find any evidence to support that knowledge. And eventually they concluded that he knew nothing of how his wife had killed their newborn children.
I really don't think he did. I think if he knew about it, he wouldn't have had his children and his parents there helping to clean out the garage.
Right.
You'd be protecting that.
Mm-hmm. You would be disposing of everything first.
Yeah, or no, I'm going to clean the garage by myself.
Exactly. It doesn't sound like he knew anything about it.
No, he immediately called Megan and 911.
Mm-hmm. And initially he's like, these aren't my kids. And it was really sad to see his reaction when he found out they were his kids that had been murdered.
Yeah, he was obviously in denial.
He was just as shocked as everyone else and heartbroken. Megan Huntsman was arrested on April 14th on 6 counts of suspicion of murder. Her bail was set at $6 million, $1 million for each infant.
Good.
At the hearing, Megan was devoid of emotion and didn't contest the amount of the bail, just telling the judge, quote, that's fine. At the jail, Megan was put under supervision because they thought she might try to harm herself. The official charges for murder would come after the bail hearing. That's because gathering evidence from the decomposed infants was a delicate process, and there were several things that had to be proven to constitute murder charges. It had to be proven that the infants had all lived, and that they were at a viable stage of development to meet the conditions for a murder charge. All of the bodies had been decomposing for several years, some over a decade. Because of this, a forensic anthropologist was called in to assist with the autopsies. Making the process more difficult, the DNA collected was degenerative, and it had to be sent out of the state to an FBI laboratory that specialized in its extraction. From the autopsies, it was determined that Darren was the father of all 7 full-term infants, 5 little girls and 2 little boys. But that was all that could be learned from the state of the bodies. They were too badly decomposed to determine anything else, including a definite cause of death. All police had to go on now was Megan's confession that she had strangled or suffocated at least 6 of her children, and that one was stillborn. And so that's why she was only charged with 6 instead of 7. And the police do feel that she was being honest with them.
Because at that point, if you're admitting to murdering 6 infants, why would you lie about the 7th?
Right. Megan being truthful would prove to be critical in her conviction, though, because the autopsy results were not definitive. The only reason she was actually charged with murder was because she confessed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to charge her at all.
Wow. Good thing she confessed.
Yeah.
And she confessed so easily. Like, she did want to get it off of her shoulders.
Right. Just like that police officer said, it sounded like she just, for 18 years, had been bottling it up. And as soon as somebody asked her, she just let it all out. While researching this case, I did some deep digging to find out how often there has been serial acts of infanticide. Sadly, it happened a lot more than I was expecting.
Oh, no.
Most cases of concealed pregnancies leading to the death of the baby involve a teenager, like Megan had been with her first pregnancy. Rarely is it a married woman with other children.
Yeah.
And very, very rarely do they go on to commit more murders.
So usually it's a teenager and it happens once.
That's right. In the cases of serial infanticide that I did find, there was usually some elements of abuse or incest that were being carried out. But I did find an eerily similar case to Megan's that involved addiction, which seemed to initially drive the multiple killings. Just like with Megan, it started with addiction and finances fueling the motive. It soon became a pattern of secretive behavior. This similar case really highlighted for me the difficulty there is in getting convictions that satisfies justice. In Canada, in 2014, the same year, workers at a U-Haul storage unit came across a scene just like Darren did. The storage unit had been repossessed because of non-payment. Inside were multiple storage-type containers of different sizes. Inside each of the containers was the body of a decaying infant as well. Some remains were wrapped in multiple bags and put in plastic tubs, while others were put in detergent in plastic pails. One tiny body was encased in cement, and only an impression was left.
No way.
Yes. The storage unit belonged to Andrea Gisbret, a 40-year-old woman that had recently been charged with fraud charges for swindling an elderly couple out of their money. Andrea had lived in Winnipeg her whole adult life, attended school there, and had been married to her high school sweetheart for almost 2 decades. She had 2 children, and by all outward appearances, she lived an idyllic life in her manicured bungalow with her family of 4, working for local charities. Unknown to others was that Andrea had a massive gambling addiction and had lost the majority of the family's money and her inheritance from her parents.
Oh, man.
Hence the fraud charges. But that wasn't all the secrets that she had kept. Through the course of her marriage, she had had at least 19 pregnancies. Did you just choke on your gasp?
Yeah. You choked and gasped me. Sorry.
Yeah.
What? 19.
Yes.
Pregnancies.
2 resulted in the children that by all reports she lovingly cared for. There were 11 therapeutic abortions, and 6 other infants were born and disposed of. All of her pregnancies had been concealed from almost everyone.
19 times.
Yeah.
Did her husband know about the abortions that she chose to have?
I couldn't find that information.
Okay.
but I suspect no. The remains of 6 infants, this time 5 boys and 1 girl, were found in the storage unit. All were the children of Andrea and her husband. Medical examiners could not conclusively prove, though, that any of the 6 infants had lived after Andrea gave birth to them. They couldn't prove that they had taken a breath or that they had eaten, but all the pathologists that did examine them surmised from their size that they were likely born alive. There was nothing wrong with them to say that they wouldn't be born alive. But even if they could have proven that each of the infants had taken a breath, the remains were too decomposed to determine how the babies had died. A lack of conclusive evidence allowed Andrea to claim that all of the infants were stillborn and that she was only saving the bodies to possibly visit later.
Well, she had created an entire little graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them had.
And because of this, she wasn't able to be prosecuted for murder.
What?
No. She received only an 8.5-year sentence for concealing the dead bodies of 6 of her children.
She got less time than Darren did for having an illegal substance.
Yes.
For putting human being little bodies into containers, cement, whatever she felt, plastic garbage bags, and hiding them away.
Right. And actually, after that, she appealed the sentence, saying that it was too harsh for the crime that she was charged with.
Honey, it's not harsh enough.
Her sentence was reduced.
No.
Yes.
Canada.
So sad, right?
We don't have to be nice all of the time.
Her sentence was reduced to 6 months for each of the 6 counts.
Get out.
Andrea showed no remorse for any of her actions.
6 months per baby?
6 months per baby.
So 3 years.
Yes. But it was all because they couldn't conclusively say that they had been born alive.
She's a serial killer.
Oh, they both are.
To the most vulnerable victim that there is.
Mm-hmm. You can't get more vulnerable than that.
No, you cannot.
Yeah. Andrea showed absolutely no remorse. It was a little bit different with Megan, although I'm not really sure you could classify her as remorseful either. She would acknowledge that what she did was wrong, but it was all without emotion.
Do you think they're not even viewing these babies as human beings, as actual people, that they're taking their lives? Or that they're my baby, they're my possession, I can do what I want with them?
I actually don't feel that they view them in any way. Like they totally disregard them. It's almost like they disassociate from it.
That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. On February 12th, 2015, Megan Huntsman pled guilty to 6 counts of first-degree murder, with her lawyers proposing a 5-year to life sentence to be served concurrently. 2 of her daughters had statements read at the sentencing hearing on April 20th, 2015, describing her as a loving parent who had done a good job caring for them, rather than the cold killer that people now saw her as. One of them wrote, quote, "Nobody could guess my mom would do anything like this. No matter what anyone thinks you are a good person." Megan's sister Jamie told the judge that her sister was, quote, "not a monster or evil." And then addressing the judge said, quote, "From what I understand, she was scared." It's no excuse.
No.
Megan didn't speak for herself at the sentencing hearing, but instead had her lawyers read her statement that she had written expressing remorse. It read, quote, "I deprived my little babies of the opportunity of life. Those babies aren't coming back, and they will never because of my actions. Depression and alcohol took hold of me the same way drugs did. I cannot give a reasonable answer why I was capable of such a sick and heinous crime. I held my secret for 18 years. Her lawyers argued for leniency because without her cooperation, attorneys on both sides noted prosecutors would not have had a case against her.
It would have been the same thing that just happened in Canada.
That's right. But the judge didn't feel that leniency was called for in this case and said, quote, "I really thought I had seen it all until this case."
Yeah, no kidding.
He had actually been the judge to sign the search warrant for the house. And he said afterwards that he had hoped he would never have to sit on this trial.
Oh, and then he got put with it.
Mm-hmm. He said during the sentencing, "It shocked me then and it shocks me now."
Yeah, this will never not be shocking.
Mm-hmm. I just couldn't wrap my head around this one. I know I've said that so many times, but I really could not. Megan was sentenced to 6 terms of 5 years to life, 3 to be served consecutively and 3 to be served concurrently. Megan is currently at the Utah State Corrections Facility in Housing Unit D and will remain there until at least 2064. At that time, she can have her initial parole hearing. She will be 89.
Wow. What a difference in the two sentencings.
Huge difference. But it was all because of her confession. And that is the case of the infanticide serial killer, the dirtbag of a mother, Megan Huntsman, who killed 6 innocent and defenseless newborns because she was so wrapped up in her secrets and addictions that she couldn't fathom having another mouth to feed.
Wow. That was terrible, Melissa. And was there any psychological testing done on either of these two women that you found?
Both women had psychological testing and nothing was found in ways of personality disorders, like no official diagnosis. They had some alternative coping mechanisms and addictions, but no psychopath or sociopathic disorders.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were both able to form loving attachments. They had support systems. They had everything going for them. What they both did have in common was living this secretive life, and both concealed all of their pregnancies, even the children that they parented.
Yeah, that is a very curious case. You shocked me with that one.
I have a feeling that what began as that initial, like for Megan, she was a teenager and she concealed the pregnancy, and then it was the drugs. But I think eventually they both became too entrenched in a pattern of killing.
Right. But it also tells me that they weren't freaked out by that killing. You didn't take it upon yourself to get birth control or have your tubes tied or do something to prevent those pregnancies. Megan had got pregnant as a teenager, concealed it, but gave birth and raised that daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are not teenagers not that a teenager doesn't know how to prevent a pregnancy, but these are 40-year-old women that know better. They know how to stop pregnancies from occurring.
Exactly. And Megan had to have had sober moments in her life to really comprehend what she had done.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is just so wild.
And those poor husbands having no idea.
The betrayal for everybody. I don't even know how their other children wrap their heads around this.
Yeah, they loved their mom.
As all children should be able to do.
And unfortunately, their siblings never got that chance.
No.
But listeners, we hope that you do get the chance to feel loved and express your love to those in your life, especially on Mother's Day.
And we'll be back next week when Christy has another case for us.
And it's a shocking one. But until then,
see ya.
Bye. Testing. Oh, I think you turned off your mic.
Oh, I probably did. I do every time I swing it.
Yep.
Muscle memory. I just want to go out and blow a whole bunch of money. I don't even care.
Let's go do it. Where you want to go shopping?
Out. He married his musical.
Your musical.
Soon followed that. Sorry. Their second dollar.
Dollar. How do you give birth to dollars?
Oh, man. So much better than the money grubbers that we do give birth to. You need a chocolate?
Yeah.
Okay. This was the crazy part.
Okay. This is the crazy part? Are you kidding me?
Well, that case is crazy, but this was really what I found so bizarre.
Okay.
Stupid dirtbags everywhere.
Right. You dirtbags are ruining our day.
Now I'm going to take you on a tangent.
Okay. I gotta eat one more chocolate first.
Okay.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.